weighs as much as our cars?
It doesn't weigh that much.
This thing falling on a Miata?
What Miata?
Oh, pop can. Okay, it's a radial engine, right? It's got a really weird arrangement of connecting rods and link rods inside, the whole thing, the master rod. There's a lot of mass inside of this. So starting this is different from starting any other engine, any other piston engine pretty much. So there's a whole procedure we go through, and that's another reason that you guys don't get to do it all the time. A couple of things when we're starting this. The cylinders up on top tend to drain, all the residual oil tends to drain and go down to the bottom cylinders. And there's a chance that those bottom cylinders down there upside down could actually get partially filled up with oil just from all the junk going down there. You see, this is the oil tank up here, fuel tank's down below on this one. So it has an external oil tank, so it's a dry sump engine because it's got a tank up here. Down at the very bottom of the engine, on the bottom, there's a collection, little bitty collection area where the oil scavenge pump draws the oil out of there, puts it up into the tank, and then of course it goes back down and through the engine again. But the problem is that we have a lot of residual oil just from sitting down in these bottom cylinders. We want to make sure that it doesn't fill them up to the point where when that piston comes down and hits a puddle of oil there, that it locks up. Because if we allow it to go and try to hydraulic its way through that, we can actually bend those expensive connecting rods inside the engine. So for that, we're going to hand pull this engine through, and I like to pull it through pretty much 9 cylinders just to make sure that every one of the cylinders is clear before I go and hit the starter with it. The starter has a heck of a lot of torque and it could do a lot of damage to it. So I'm going to right now, I'm going to go ahead and pull it through. I've made sure I'm safe. My mag switch is off, and here's my key way over here so that I don't have a problem. If the mag switch is off, it should be perfectly safe, right? No way. Okay, we're mechanics. We know better than that. That's why they pay us, is to fix stuff that isn't right. So even though the switch is off, it could still have hot mags. For that matter, if it did have a hot mag and it was ready to fire off just from pulling it through, because magnetos will fire just like your lawnmower. You pull it, it starts, right? If the mag was screwed up and it was a hot mag, I'm going to make sure that I've got my throttle back and my mixture control back in idle cutoff. So the carburetor, even if it starts, it'll only pop a little bit and it won't get much fuel, so it won't continue running and take off through the fence over there. So with that off, my fuel is still off, my oil is still off. I'm going to go ahead and pull the prop through and count it. You can notice I rolled my sleeves down on this nice day. This is my PPE, personal protective equipment, right? Which goes along with the glasses, and it also goes along with the headset. Normally when I'm running an engine like this, I try to wear a full suit so that if there was a problem, fuel, oil blowing all over the place, I prefer not to have it on my skin. So I'm going to pull this through and count the blade.
All exhaust is going to blow out of here.
Yeah.
Sure.
No, it's not. Maybe look for 6 and tight. Yeah. First time.
Oh, all the oil's already burned out?
Yeah.
Let's look at it.
Boom, 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 boom.
When it's running, don't stand in the liner.
Okay,
Like
so
right
I'm
there.
pretty happy with that. It feels good.
If it picks up something, it's going to hit you.
It is a little warm now. We ran it earlier, as you probably know. The oil in this engine is it's either a 50 weight or a 65 weight oil. It's a real thick, heavy oil. So when we start a radial engine, we try to keep the RPM down pretty low to let that oil warm up, especially if it's sitting up here in a cold tank. We need that oil to go through, circulate, and warm up before we bring it up to power. When I'm running this, you can pretty much walk around the whole thing, but again, anytime you're running a propeller airplane, you don't get in line with the propeller. It can pick up rocks and stuff, it can grab something and shoot it at you like a bullet, so you want to stay out of line with the prop. When we're running this, we're going to do a magneto check, and so we've got a right magneto, a left magneto. We're going to run from both to left and then both and then back to right, and we're going to be looking for an RPM drop of about 75 to 150 RPM. When I run the propeller through, I've got a propeller control here. The propeller blades will change angles, and you'll actually hear the engine slow down. We'll actually have a little slowdown on the RPM, about 100 RPM or so, We'll also see the manifold pressure change. The manifold pressure is an indication of how hard the engine is working. So our manifold pressure tells us if it's up close to 30 inches, it's working really hard. If it's down around 15 or 20, not working so hard. So that's our indication of how hard the engine's working. The pilots in flight will balance the RPM and manifold pressure to give them the best cruise and fuel, the best speed for the amount of fuel that they want to use. And that depends on how much fuel they want to use, how far they're going, how fast they want to go, and how do they find all that information? It's in their book. It's in the manual for the airplane. So they just set it up to what the manual says they should do. So maybe at 67% power, you're going to have 2100 RPM and 22 inches of manifold pressure, something like that.
Should be 1 to 72. Retractable key.
Cessna 210, I believe.
210.
Had an extra window in the back. It was an older one, but it didn't have the strut on it. It wasn't a 182.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. So I'm going to be watching RPM, manifold pressure. We're also going to, first thing we're going to watch when we get this thing started is I'm going to look for oil pressure. If I don't have oil pressure, that means the bearings aren't getting oil. We're shutting that puppy down, right? We don't want to burn up those bearings. We've got fuel pressure here. We're going to see that too. I've got cylinder head temperature over here also. So I've carried it through. I've run it through now. I'm going to go ahead and turn the fuel on and turn the oil on. And then, in starting this, we're going to use a primer to start it, and it starts pretty rough because it doesn't distribute fuel real evenly, so you're going to see it, I like to say it's farting and coughing and doing all kinds of ugly things. But you'll actually probably see some big yellow flame come out of the exhaust and all that. That's pretty normal stuff for it. Flame coming out of the carburetor down there, not quite so normal. That would mean that I probably screwed it up a little bit. We got that big master rod going around inside of there and all the link rods. That's a lot of mass. If we were to start this and just hit the ignition, if it backfired or kicked back, we could bend a lot of that linkage. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually start it spinning, and I'm going to put some fuel in it. I'm going to give it the primer, and it's a carbureted engine, a float carbureted engine. So it's drawing fuel out of the carburetor, but I'm going to give it a little extra primer of fuel, a little extra fuel as it's spinning around, and that fuel will get distributed through those cylinders. And then I'll bring the spark in. Once it's got that mass rotating, then I'll bring the spark in by turning on the ignition, and it should fire off right then. It's going to be real rough at first for a first minute or two, and I'm going to have to balance out my throttle setting and my mixture setting to get it to run smoothly. Once I've got it down and it's running pretty smoothly, oil temp, everything's coming up good, then we'll go ahead and bring it up and do our mag check and play with it a little bit. So I'll let you know when I'm doing the mag check. We'll do like left and right, and I'll turn the prop. So actually, as that prop is spinning, if you're standing in the right position over here, you can actually look at that prop arc, and as I move the propeller handle, you can almost see the blade twist. You'll actually see it move as it's going around. So it's something that is kind of cool because you study the theory of it, but until you see it happening, it doesn't really make sense to you. But we'll do that. So. Okay, and I am ready for power. Thank you. And I have got master on, and I'm going to crack the throttle a little bit.